You were trained to be soft, docile, always available. The math on this is simple. Nobody respects you. It wasn't your fault in the beginning. Nobody is born this way. You were molded by school, by family, by culture, by social media, by a world that spent the last few years telling you that being a real man was wrong. That having firmness was aggressiveness. That setting boundaries was toxicity. That taking up space was arrogance. And you, like any human being who wants to belong, who wants to be accepted, adjusted yourself. You shrank. You gave up a thing here, yielded a space there, swallowed a small humiliation over there, until the day you looked around and realized that nobody, absolutely nobody, treats you with the respect you deserve. When was the last time someone thought twice before disrespecting you? At work, in a relationship, in a group of friends? When was the last time someone looked at you and thought, I don't mess with this guy? If you had to think about the answer, you already have your diagnosis. And this video is your treatment. Before we continue, I need you to understand something fundamental about how respect works. Not the respect people talk about in speeches, not the respect that appears in awareness campaigns. I'm talking about real, instinctive, primitive respect. The kind that happens at the deepest level of human relations. Before a single word is even spoken. Human beings are social animals that automatically respond to status signals. This isn't an opinion, it's neuroscience and evolutionary psychology. Your brain and the brain of everyone around you is constantly reading the room. Reading posture, tone of voice, speaking speed, reaction to conflict, response to disrespect. And based on these signals, in fractions of a second, it categorizes the people around into two very simple categories. This is someone I respect, or someone I can ignore. You don't consciously choose which category you put people in. Your brain does it automatically. And the brain of everyone around you does the same with you. The question then isn't whether you deserve respect. The question is, what signals are you sending? Because if you are being ignored in meetings, if your opinions carry no weight, if people walk all over you without a second thought, if you do everything right and are still the last to be considered, the answer isn't in the outside world. It's in the signals that you, every single day, without realizing it, have been sending. Now I need to take you back in time. Not too far. Just enough for you to understand how you got here. There has been a project underway for decades in Western societies. A silent, gradual project that infiltrated education, media, social networks, pop culture, entertainment. A project with a very clear goal: to redefine what it means to be a man. And the new definition this project proposes is simple. A good man is a docile man. An evolved man is a man who doesn't impose, doesn't take up space, has no firmness, has no stance. A modern man is a man who apologizes for existing. This created a generation of weak people. But weakness is not a virtue, it is a flaw. A weak man is a coward, and cowardice is one of the worst moral flaws for a society. And the cruelest part of all is that this project sold itself as liberation, as evolution, as progress. But what it produced, in practice, was a generation of anxious, resentful, invisible men, who don't know how to stand their ground, who are afraid of displeasing others, who live apologizing for their own existence, and who deep down are angry. An anger that has no outlet because they were also taught that feeling angry is wrong. Nietzsche already described this mechanism in the 19th century. He called it slave morality, the inversion of values made by those who don't have the strength to compete head-on. Instead of developing strength, they demonize strength. Instead of building power, they moralize against power. They convince the lion that being a lion is wrong. And the lion, confused, starts behaving like a sheep. Meanwhile, the sheep who preached this morality continued to be stepped on equally, but now, with the lion by their side, equally stepped on, equally invisible. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is what you see happening every day. The man who sets boundaries is called aggressive. The man who takes a stance is called inflexible. The man who doesn't cry in public is called repressed. The man who leads with firmness is called authoritarian. And the man who accepts all this, who molds himself, who yields, who backs down, this one is called evolved. While nobody truly respects him. And here is the most painful point of this whole story. The point I need you to face without looking away. Men accepted it. Not all of them, but many, maybe you. Maybe you accepted this narrative not because you truly believed it, but because it was the path of least resistance. Because resisting took work. Because agreeing opened doors. Because disagreeing generated conflict. And you, like anyone who learned that conflict is dangerous, kept yielding. Yielding in the way you express yourself. Yielding in the way you position yourself. Yielding on boundaries. Yielding on the space you occupy. Until the day, the version of you that exists for the world has almost nothing to do with who you really are inside. Carl Jung called this the shadow. That part of you that you repressed because you learned it was unacceptable. Your assertiveness went to the shadow. Your legitimate anger went to the shadow. Your ability to say no went to the shadow. Your firmness, your presence, your willingness to take up space, all of this was pushed inside, hidden, shamed, because the world said these things were bad. And the result is a man who on the outside seems calm, always chill, always available, always smiling. But on the inside is accumulating resentment in layers. Layers upon layers of situations that should have been confronted and weren't. Of versions of himself that were never allowed to exist. Jung said that a man who does not integrate, his shadow is not a gentleman. He is a dangerous man in a different way. Dangerous to himself. Because all this repressed energy doesn't disappear. It turns into anxiety. It turns into bitterness. It turns into the constant, corrosive feeling that you are wasting something. That you should be more. That you deserved more. And you are right. You did deserve more. But you gave it up. Small dose by small dose, until you were left with nothing. Now I want you to step into your own daily life. Not the daily life you show people. What really happens? Think about the last time someone made a joke at your expense. One of those jokes that had an uncomfortable underlying truth. That laughed at something that truly bothers you. And what did you do? You laughed along. You looked away. You took a sip of something. You changed the subject. Because confronting seemed too risky. Because you didn't want to kill the mood. Because you wanted to preserve the harmony. But do you know what happened in that moment from a psychological standpoint? You taught a class. You taught that you can be tested. That you yield. That the boundary doesn't exist, or if it does, it won't be defended. Respect begins the instant. You stop laughing at what is destroying you. Think about the last time you said yes to something you wanted to say no to. The favor you did with anger in your heart. The extra task you accepted without questioning. The plan you went along with even though you didn't want to, just so you wouldn't disappoint anyone. Each of these moments individually seems small, but added up, they build an image. And this image says, this guy is available for everything. This guy has no boundaries. This guy I can use. Think about work. The CEO, the leader, the guy who moves up is not the one who does everything he's told without questioning. It's not the one who smiles when humiliated to avoid conflict. It's not the one who complains in secret, but agrees with everything in front of the boss. That guy is not a leader. He is led. Everyone around knows this, even if no one says it out loud. The leadership position goes to the guy who takes a stance, who speaks looking you in the eye, who disagrees when he needs to disagree, who delivers results, not excuses. Because leadership isn't given to those who ask for it. It is recognized in those who already carry it. In romantic relationships, it's the same thing. A woman doesn't feel safe with a man who can't stand his ground even in small situations. Not because she wants an aggressive or controlling man, but because she wants a safe haven. A man who, if needed, will stand firm, who will defend her in a risky situation, who is secure and knows who he is. The guy who cries over everything, who doesn't know how to take a stance, who needs constant validation. That guy is not a safe haven for anyone. He is merely a weak and cowardly person who will be put in the friend zone and walked all over by every woman he gets involved with. This isn't sexism. It's human psychology working exactly as it was programmed by thousands of years of evolution. But here is where the heaviest part begins. The part where most people turn off the video so they don't have to face it. Because up to here, it's easy to blame culture, society, upbringing. But now we are going to talk about what is underneath all of this. What really feeds this pattern inside you? You think it's cute to say you're too sensitive for a cruel world. But that is the exact same thing as inviting everyone to disrespect you. Think about it. When you use your sensitivity as a shield, when you use your past as a permanent justification, when you use your fragility as an identity, you are not being honest. You're being strategic in a way that destroys you. Because this posture communicates something very clear to everyone around. This one won't fight back. This one accepts it. This one is safe to disrespect. Freud described the pleasure principle as the human tendency to always seek the path of least resistance, to avoid pain, to avoid conflict, to avoid discomfort. And this principle, when it becomes the autopilot of your life, and this principle, when it becomes the autopilot of your life, keeps you trapped in a comfort zone that is not comfortable at all. Because you are not comfortable. You are anesthetized. There is a huge difference between the two. Real comfort comes from knowing you are capable of defending yourself, of standing your ground, of taking up your space. What you have right now is just the absence of external conflict with an immense internal conflict growing underneath. And this internal conflict has a very specific name: resentment. Resentment is the religion of the man who lacks the courage to say no. It is the accumulation of all the times you should have spoken up and stayed quiet. Of all the times you should have reacted and smiled. Of all the times you should have walked away and stayed. Nietzsche saw resentment as the most lethal poison to the human soul. Not because it's intense, but because it's silent. It corrodes from the inside while on the outside you keep smiling, keeping yourself available, keeping yourself docile. Until the day you can't take it anymore. And then it explodes in the wrong way, at the wrong time, with the wrong person. Because dammed up energy always finds a way out. The question is whether you will choose that way out or if it will choose you. Most people stop here. They understand the problem, feel the discomfort, agree that something needs to change and go back to life exactly the way it was. Because changing hurts. Because setting boundaries generates conflict. Because being different from what you've been your whole life is scary, but there is a part that almost no one has the courage to admit out loud. A truth that goes beyond habit and behavior. A truth about what you really lost throughout this process of becoming the docile man the world wanted you to be. You lost yourself, not all at once, slowly, in small, imperceptible doses. Every time you swallowed something you should have spit out. Every time you smiled when you should have been serious. Every time you said yes when everything inside you screamed no. You left pieces of yourself along the way. And the man who exists today, the one everyone sees, is an edited, castrated, reduced version of who you could be. The weak man is the product of a culture that hates masculinity. And the respected man is the one who reclaims his strength. Not dumb brutality. Not the aggressiveness of someone who needs to prove something. But conscious, calibrated, almost mafia-like strength. The strength of someone who knows exactly who he is and won't ask permission to exist. Vito Corleone never yelled. If you've watched The Godfather, you know what I'm talking about. He spoke softly, moved slowly, listened more than he spoke. And yet, when he was in the room, everyone knew he was the one running everything. Not because he threatened at every moment, but because his presence alone was enough. It already communicated everything that needed to be communicated. Don Corleone is a character, but what he represents is very real. The archetype of the man who doesn't seek validation because he already has, within himself, the unshakable certainty of who he is. John Gotti reached the top of one of the most powerful organizations in New York not just through brute force, but through image, through posture. Through the deliberate construction of a presence that people simply couldn't ignore. He knew that respect is a currency, that you either accumulate it or lose it, that there is no neutral. Every interaction is a deposit or a withdrawal from that account. And he never let anyone make a withdrawal without a consequence. Machiavelli wrote something in the 16th century that leaders still study today, that the prince does not need to be loved by everyone, but he must avoid being despised. And contempt, he explained, does not come from firmness. It does not come from strictness. It comes from weakness, from inconstancy, from breaking one's word, from a lack of character. The man who is despised is the one who changes his stance at the slightest sign of pressure, the one who says one thing and does another, the one who yields at the first conflict. That is the man nobody respects, regardless of how much effort he makes to please. Now comes the moment you need to listen to with full attention. He is not peaceful. He is impotent, and he calls his own impotence goodness. The truly peaceful man knows how to defend himself, knows how to stand his ground, and despite that chooses to be peaceful. This is the most important distinction that exists on this subject. And it is the distinction that separates the respected man from the ignored man. It's not about being aggressive. It never was. It's about having the capacity to react and consciously choosing when and how to use that capacity. The lion that decides not to attack is completely different from the lamb that cannot attack. The world knows the difference. Instinctively, automatically, without needing to think. The world feels when you are incapable of reacting. In response to that with disrespect, Thomas Shelby in Peaky Blinders carried something few characters have: the presence of someone who has already seen the worst and is no longer afraid. He didn't need to threaten because the possibility of the threat was already in the air. Not because he was violent all the time, but because everyone around knew he was capable. And that capability, even when not used, was already enough to change how people interacted with him. You need that weight. Not the weight of violence, the weight of certainty. The weight of someone who knows what he's doing, who knows what he wants, and who won't give that up for any social pressure. Psychology is clear. People do not respect those who do not respect themselves. And self-respect isn't what you say about yourself. It's what you demonstrate in behavior, in the reactions you have, in the boundaries you set, and most importantly, in the boundaries you defend. Because setting a boundary without defending it is worse than not setting one at all. Because it teaches that your words carry no weight, that you threaten but don't follow through. And nobody respects an empty threat. If this has bothered you up to this point, great. It means you finally woke up. It means something inside you recognized the pattern. Recognized yourself in this description. And this recognition, as painful as it may be, is the first real step toward any change. Here's the truth you've been running from for years. You are not disrespected by chance. You are not ignored due to the injustice of the universe. You train the people around you to treat you this way. Every out-of-place smile was a lesson. Every ignored boundary was a lesson. Every time you yielded when you shouldn't have. When you swallowed it when you should have spoken, when you laughed when you should have been serious, you were teaching. And people learned well. The good news, the only one that matters, is that what was learned can be unlearned. What was built can be rebuilt, but not with words. With behavior. With consistency. With the willingness to go through the discomfort of being different from what you have been. He does not ask for a fairer world. He becomes stronger within an unfair world. So how do you do this? How do you start rebuilding this presence? How do you become the man people respect before he even opens his mouth? It starts with a shift in perspective that precedes any technique, any habit, any behavior. As long as you are seeking approval, you are in a subordinate position. You are monitoring the room, reading people's moods, adjusting who you are to please those around you. This puts you in the position of an eternal candidate. A candidate to be accepted. A candidate to be respected. A candidate to be valued. And candidates do not inspire respect. They inspire pity at best and contempt at worst. The respected man is not a candidate. He just is. He enters the room knowing who he is, what he represents, and what he will not accept. He doesn't read the room to adapt. He is read by the room. This starts in the eyes. The man who is unsure of himself looks away first, not because he is polite, but because he is submissive. The man with presence holds eye contact because he isn't asking anything from anyone. It's not aggressiveness. It's security. And the difference between the two is noticeable to anyone in less than a second. It starts in the speed at which you speak. The anxious man speaks fast because he's afraid people will stop paying attention. The man with presence speaks at his own pace. He pauses. He lets the silence exist, because he knows that what he has to say is worth the wait. And silence, used with intention, is one of the most powerful tools of presence that exists. The man who doesn't need to fill every silence communicates something very clear. I am comfortable here. I don't need your approval to exist. It starts in your response to disrespect. Not yelling, not exploding, not making a scene. A sustained look. A pause of 2-3 seconds. And a short, dry sentence, without anger but without margin. No, not with me. And then silence. The silence after a well-placed boundary is worth more than any speech. Because it communicates, I said what I had to say. I won't repeat it. And you know what happens if this repeats. It starts with stopping explaining yourself so much. The man who explains himself too much is implicitly asking for permission to exist. He is saying, please understand I have good reasons, please don't judge me, please accept me. The respected man communicates decisions, not justifications. You don't need a paragraph to say no. A clear no is enough. If someone insists on knowing why, you can simply say, that doesn't work for me. Period. Without elaborating. Without apologizing. And it starts with truly accepting that some people will like you less when you start having boundaries. This is inevitable and it is necessary. Because those people were used to the man who always yielded. And when you stop yielding, it bothers them. This discomfort will be interpreted by a part of you as a sign that you did something wrong. You didn't. It's exactly the opposite. It's the sign that you are on the right track. The strong man accepts being hated by some, in order to be respected by himself. This isn't cynicism. It is the basic condition of any person who has true character. Character costs something. It costs cheap approval. It costs the applause of people who only applauded because you were easy to manipulate. And that is a price worth every penny. I'll leave you with one last image to close. There is a huge difference between two types of men going through the same difficult situation. The first stays quiet because he is afraid to speak. The second stays quiet because he doesn't need to speak. The first smiles because he fears conflict. The second smiles because he is in control. The first yields because he doesn't know how to say no. The second yields when he chooses to yield. The second to yield because he decided that battle isn't worth his time. On the outside, sometimes these two men look the same, but the people around them feel the difference. They always feel it. Because what separates these two men is not superficial behavior. It's where that behavior comes from. Does it come from fear or does it come from strength? For a long time, you operated out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being alone, fear of being judged. And that fear was disguised as goodness, as sensitivity, as peace. But it was fear. Just fear. From now on, you have a choice. Not an easy choice. A real choice. The choice to start operating out of strength. To start being the kind of man who doesn't ask permission to take up space. Who doesn't smile when he is being destroyed. Who doesn't explain his decisions to those who have no relevance in his life? Who knows how to say no without needing a paragraph? Who looks you in the eye and holds the gaze? Who speaks slowly because he knows that what he has to say matters? That man exists inside you. He has always existed. He was just pushed into the shadow, space by space, boundary by boundary, smile by smile. The question now isn't whether you are capable of being that man. The question is, do you have the courage to stop being the other one? Enough apologizing for existing. Enough training the world to step on you. Enough calling fear goodness. The respect you want begins the moment you truly decide that you will never again laugh at what is destroying you. If this video woke you up to something, you already know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. Not because I'm asking, because a man who finds something worthwhile doesn't let it go. And right now on your screen is a video that will continue this work. Don't skip it. A man who starts a transformation and stops halfway hasn't started anything.